I'd like to call the meeting to order. I don't think we've seen this many people in this room in a long time, so it's very good to see everybody. Most of you are here for good reasons too, so that's good too. A lot of times it's not always good when we have a room full of people, but tonight it is, and so we're very happy to have all our guests with us. And we have some of our Muslim community here in recognition of Ramadan, if you would like to approach. And we'll stand for the invocation. I don't know if you tell us at what point to stand, and we'll stand.
No, you're okay sitting.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm going to start the opening invocation now, and my name is Najim Zaman. In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful, and the generous, all praises and thanks belong to God, Lord of the worlds and all of the creation, the owner and the master of the day of reckoning. You alone do we worship, and you alone do we seek assistance. O Lord, guide us to the straight path, guide us to the straight path, guide us to the straight path, the path on those which you have bestowed your favors upon, and not the path of those who have gone astray, nor earned your wrath. Ameen. Amen.
Thank you very much. If you would please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for those of you who don't often visit us, we recently started what I hope to become a new tradition. It was Councilmember Fernandez's idea to begin the meeting with a historical or entertaining fact about our city. So we've I don't know if this goes on forever. We're probably going to run short on new material, but maybe we'll get new people cycling in. So it's my turn tonight to do that. And so in a document that I was reading recently, I came across the 1926 criminal code for the city of Temple Terrace. This was a year after the city was incorporated, and this was one of the first, well, this was the first criminal code enacted by the city council a year after they were incorporated. So I'm not sure some of these would pass constitutional muster these days, but I'm not sure that some of them passed constitutional muster even in 1926. But I won't read the whole thing to you, but here's some excerpts. In 1926, the city council outlawed vagrancy in the city of Temple Terrace, and goes on to define vagrancy as all able-bodied male persons over the age of 18 years old who are without means of support and remain in idleness shall be deemed vagrants. A lot of us would be in jail. Another section says it's unlawful for any person to appear on the public streets or in any public establishment intoxicated. I think there'd be a lot of people in trouble there too. It is unlawful for any person to use in any public place within the corporate limits of the city any profane or vulgar language. Some of us may be in more trouble than others on that one. Any person found asleep in any of the city streets shall be guilty of disorderly conduct. Any person found asleep on the private property of another person is also guilty of disorderly conduct. This one is interesting. No person shall on any public street in the city ride or drive any wagon, carriage, buggy, bicycle, which we still have, or other vehicle except an automobile over the speed of 12 miles an hour. So if you're riding your bicycle, you better be going below 12 miles an hour, which for some of us is not too hard. And don't be drunk and cussing while you're doing that either. It's also unlawful for any person to throw on any sidewalk or street a banana peel. I am not making this up. It's right here from 1926. So that is, I don't know if it's interesting, but it was fun for me anyway. So, Hey, would you like to approach the podium, please? Or whoever you'd like. The first item is a proclamation in recognition of Arab American Heritage Month. And to receive this proclamation, we have Miss Aya Yassine is here. Aya is a Temple Terrace resident and is also a council appointee to one of the advisory committees to the Transportation Policy, I'm on it, I'm the vice chair. Transportation Planning Organization. So thank you for coming tonight. The proclamation reads, whereas in Temple Terrace and across the United States, Arab Americans have made and continue to make valuable contributions to virtually every aspect of our society, including medicine, law, business, education, technology, government, military service, and culture. And whereas Arab Americans have shared their rich culture and traditions with neighbors and friends, their resilient family values, strong work ethic, dedication to education and diversity, and faith and creed that have added strength to our nation, state, and city. And whereas Arab Americans have also enriched our society by sharing in the entrepreneurial American spirit, and whereas as we celebrate the contributions that Arab Americans have made and continue to make in our community, we also recognize the role that we can all play in creating a city, state, and nation that is free from hatred and bigotry. And whereas the city of Temple Terrace takes great pride in the diversity of people, cultures, and traditions represented by its residents, and whereas Temple Terrace is enriched by the significant and lasting contributions of its residents of Arab American heritage, now therefore I, Andrew Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby proclaim the month of, this says May, but it's April. We'll get an amended one. I think it's April, as Arab American Heritage Month. So, thank you very much. Would you like to say a few words, eh?
I just want to thank you, Mayor, and thank all council members for this opportunity, and we would like to thank you for the proclamation, and I appreciate it, and we hope every year that we can get this, or maybe we can have it always, every April, then you don't have to do a proclamation anymore, or a forever proclamation.
Very good. Well, I'm going to give you this one, but we'll get you a revised one that says April. This one says May.
Okay. Where do I?
You want to step up and get one? Okay. Come on.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are we having pictures?
I don't know about me.
Thank you. Next is one that's really remarkable. We get to do this at the beginning of meetings often, and it's probably one of the neater parts of being mayor is getting to read these to people. But this one really stands out, and I'm glad we have a big crowd tonight, and I'm glad we have our guests from the state attorney's office here to listen to this also. So Nathan, would you please come up? Listen to this story, folks. This is amazing. On Friday, March 24th, while walking his dog near Morris Glen Way in Bridgeford Oaks, Nathan observed a vehicle driving recklessly in the neighborhood. The vehicle was traveling at a high rate of speed, swerving into yards, and almost striking cars and other witnesses. After watching the vehicle make several passes, Nathan placed trash cans near the street to prevent the driver from striking other bystanders. The vehicle eventually stopped and the driver exited, approaching one of the onlookers. The individual began striking the victim repeatedly, causing injuries to her hands, shoulders, and arms. Nathan leaped into action and intervened during the assault. Nathan was able to grab the individual and hold her until law enforcement arrived, preventing anyone else from being harmed. Once the responding officers detained the individual, Nathan stood by and offered to assist until other units could arrive. Nathan's quick actions prevented further violence and stopped the dangerous situation from continuing. He acted with bravery and courage, disregarding his own safety during a violent situation. Because of his efforts, Nathan Bynum is hereby presented with a very high award in Temple Terrace called the Citizen Citation. Nathan, I don't know if you know who is sitting in the gallery near you, but I'd like to introduce you to the Hillsborough County State Attorney, Susie Lopez, who is here.
Thank you. On behalf of the citizens of Temple Terrace and Hillsborough County, we're going to look into your case, but thank you so much for everything that you did.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
I'm just glad.
We're getting theatrical even.
Yeah, this is fancy. I'm just glad that everybody's okay and that I was able to be there and that everything was at the right place, right time. So thank you for this honor. It's really something special. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Chief, City Manager?
Mayor, do we-
Nathan's also an employee. Please?
I'm really moving. Thank you.
Okay, first we look at Lori and then we look at it one at a time.
Yes, and I would be Lori.
Okay, next.
Great.
You have your own paparazzi. Next, Detective Alec Gonzalez. Yes, sir, please. I don't often see you in uniform.
Sorry.
It's good to see you. So I'd like to introduce folks. This is Detective Alex Gonzalez, and he has been selected as our 2022 Thomas L. Lewis Police Officer of the Year. This is one of the highest distinctions one of our officers can receive. And it reads, Temple Terrace Police Department's 2022 Officer of the Year personifies the police department's core values of courage, honor, and commitment. Detective Gonzalez has consistently performed well above and beyond the call of duty. He is a police officer genuinely dedicated to the city of Temple Terrace and the citizens he serves. And for those of us who know him, these are not just idle words. Detective Gonzalez has distinguished himself well beyond the normal expectations of a police officer in his daily duties to the department and the community. He consistently strives to identify positive solutions to the calls he is called upon to address. He went above and beyond his assigned duties in the Community Investigation Unit on several occasions by gathering pertinent information on several high-profile criminal cases. Because of the positive relationships and trust he had established throughout the community, he was able to quickly provide the CIU with invaluable investigative information. Detective Gonzalez also assisted throughout the year in translating Spanish for dispatchers, other officers, and detectives, which assisted in saving valuable time and gathering information from a victim, witness, or complainant. He routinely engages residents throughout the community to deter crime, protect citizens, and increase their overall quality of life. He has a servant's heart, treats everyone he encounters with dignity and respect, and continually strives to be of assistance to everyone he meets. For these reasons and his uncompromising dedication to the city of Temple Terrace, its citizens, and his many co-workers, Detective Alex Gonzalez has been awarded the 2022 Thomas L. Lewis Police Officer of the Year Award. This is from myself, all of my colleagues on the council, the city manager, the chief and all of your command staff, and we're very thankful for your service. Would like to say a few words?
Definitely. I just want to say thank you to the members, and specifically my chief for giving me the opportunity to come to the city. About 4 years ago, I transferred my family from up north, and we moved to Florida. And honored to be the chief giving me the opportunity to be part of this team. And I'm very excited, and hopefully I can retire also on this city. And but I thank you all for giving my family and giving myself the opportunity to be part of your family. And thank you for everything.
Thank you. That's way better than the certificate I did. Ms. Lopez? You didn't know you were going to have to work tonight, did you?
Too many cameras.
I'm good, thank you.
Smile on the inside.
Hey, young lady.
Here. Oh, okay, got it.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Get your kids up there. Bring your kids up. Come on. Take 2 seconds.
Yeah, now you can see where you are.
Here, hold that. Alec Hassey? Come on up, Alec. Welcome. So, the fire department is never going to let us do something like that for the police without also having a firefighter up here. I'm kidding. It's also time for the Firefighter of the Year award, and we are very honored to present this tonight to Firefighter Alec Hassey as the 2022 Firefighter of the Year. Firefighter Hassey is truly dedicated to the City of Temple Terrace and the citizens he serves. He began his career with the City of Temple Terrace Fire Department in July of 2020. I think I remember your pinning ceremony. He proudly serves on the Honor Guard and on the Executive Board of the Temple Terrace Professional Firefighters IAFF Local 2160. Firefighter Hassey has dedicated many hours to researching and documenting the history of the Temple Terrace Fire Department. He exemplifies our agency's mission and core values, and his principles align with those of the Temple Terrace Fire Department. His compassion, professionalism, and respect for our citizens and visitors is evident both on duty and off. As described by his co-workers, Firefighter Hassey always helps new hires and sets a higher standard every time. I don't think anyone at the department within their scope does more with their time and capabilities than he does. For those reasons and his uncompromising dedication to the City of Temple Terrace, its citizens, his many co-workers, Firefighter Hassey has been awarded the City of Temple Terrace Fire Department's Firefighter of the Year for 2022. Congratulations. Alec, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you guys for this honor. I'm extremely grateful to work for such an organization as this one. I mean, it's been awesome every minute of it. And I'm very excited to get this award. I'm more excited that I'm getting married in 3 days. So
Congratulations.
this is all very exciting. But thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your service. And again, this is on behalf of myself, my colleagues on the city council, the city manager, the fire chief, the command staff. Everybody is very proud of your service. You've done a tremendous job since you've been here. You have a bright future ahead. And congratulations on your marriage.
Hey, Lieutenant, you guys come up. We got to get more people than the police officers.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. Yeah. You don't see the camera, they can't see you.
That's what I've heard, but I can still see.
Typical. You see what's happening here?
We need to get closer together.
Oh, look at that. That's working.
Look at Lori first. Okay, let's look at your fiancé
All right,
next.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay.
You scoot over so you can get in here. Here, you guys hold this together.
Okay.
Congrats, Al. Thanks, Chief.
I can already see next year Chief Albano's going to call in a medical emergency down the road. Thin the herd out here, I'm sure. What's next? National Library Week. Joe Averill Snell. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here tonight. So in recognition of National Library Week, we have a proclamation. It says, whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions where people of all ages, interests, and backgrounds can come together and learn. And whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of our cities, towns, schools, and campuses, libraries offer members of the community a welcoming space and opportunities to explore new passions through technology, programs, and services. Whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve, libraries and librarians work to create an equitable society by providing free access to accurate information. Whereas libraries are a resource for all members of the community regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender, identity, socioeconomic status by offering services and educational programming that transform lives and strengthens communities. Now therefore I, Andrew Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, do hereby proclaim April 23 through 29 as National Library Week. Thank you for being here. Would you like to say a few words? Yeah.
Thank you, City Council. Supporting our community is what we're here for. The theme of Library Week this year is There's More to the Story, because this year it's about trying to let people know what the library has beyond books for them. And so our meeting spaces, our programming, our guest lectures, our ongoing education, because we are the busiest part of every day is always the kids showing up after school to do their homework, and the homework groups are so cute, but we're also here for ongoing education. People come to us for coding classes, for their GED, to study up for the ASVAB. We support the garden club. We support art. Whatever the community is interested in, the library is here to provide information about and spaces for. Thank you for recognizing us, but most of all, thank you for having us as part of the community.
Thank you, Joe. Actually, you're the library board liaison?
I have a very small posse, Carol.
Carol, you're on the library board too, right?
Yes, I am.
All right. Ah. Good.
Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
for being here.
Thank you, sir.
One more. Please, our friends are here from the State Attorney's Office. Please come up. As I mentioned, we have some distinguished guests here. Susie Lopez is the Hillsborough County State Attorney, and Chris Jeffords, I think, is well known in the city. He's retired from a police department here and is now working at the State Attorney's Office. So thank you for joining us tonight. We have a proclamation for National Crime Victim Rights Week that I'd like to share with you. It says, whereas Florida is a law and order state and will always be dedicated to providing a voice to crime victims and their families, National Crime Victims Rights Week provides the opportunity to recognize the importance of crime victim services, ensuring that victims have access to services and support, and promoting discussion on how communities, organizations, and professionals can work together to reach all victims. And whereas dedicated victim service providers are working daily to meet the needs of crime victims, and we continue their efforts to expand services to victims that face barriers to meaningful access to rights and services, such as isolation, lack of transportation, language limitations, and cultural barriers. The Temple Terrace City Council wishes to commend the Hillsborough County Victim Assistance Program for providing exemplary services to the victims of crime within the city of Temple Terrace and throughout Hillsborough County. And whereas during National Crime Victim Rights Week, the city of Temple Terrace renews our commitment to providing survivors of crime the support they need to heal. And whereas as a community, let us all work together to stop crimes before they happen and to give the victims the support they need to restore a sense of trust and safety and to move forward toward healing and justice. Now, therefore, I, Andrew Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby declare April 23 through 29 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Susie?
Thank you, Mayor. I am the proudest state attorney in the great state of Florida. I work with an absolutely incredible team. Chris Jeffords is a part of my team, and we strive to work hard every day to support victims of crime in Temple Terrace, in the city of Tampa, and all throughout Hillsborough County. After seeing Mr. Bynum here this evening, we strive to be like Nathan Bynum. He stands up for victims, and that's exactly what we strive to do every day. Thank you for this proclamation. We are deeply grateful, and we will continue to work hard for you, the citizens of Temple Terrace, and everyone in Hillsborough County as we support victims every week, but especially during National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you very much.
Make him give a speech.
You have the nice camera.
I think we gotta scoot over, get in the center.
Yep.
There we go.
Chief?
I know Lori's routine.
Chief, you want to come up?
I'll try to get you guys over.
He was just directing us.
No, but you should, that's a good thought.
Like old times, come on.
It's your fault for standing
You
up.
being a fire chief up with me?
Hey, you can victims. You should go.
Well, I want the fire chief in.
Do you?
Yeah. Hold on, one more.
Yeah,
He helps victims, I'm just saying. 1, 2, 3.
One more.
Probably crop him out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, I think that's a record for proclamations, but we did all that in 30 minutes, so we're not too bad.
Oh, good.
So, let's see, what's next? Presentations, non-board appointments. Oh, have we had an opportunity to review the minutes of our April 4th meeting, and if so, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion, or if not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the minutes are adopted. Persons wishing to be heard on items not on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit imposed on all comments from the public. We do ask that speakers address the council from the podium and begin by stating their name and city of residence. Currently, I have no requests to speak. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. The council, the mayor, we probably there's something went wrong. We were expecting Ramadan recognition today, but I guess it was not really organized or prepared properly. We just wanted to put that in the record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. There are other members of the public.
Thank you. My name is Samir Tamimi, and I'm the director of MDF, Muslim for Democracy and Fairness. And I would just like to echo what Brother Jamal said. We came here today with the expectation of a Ramadan recognition that's been done for the past 4 years, and we have received none. We would like to put that on our records, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Okay. Next is a resolution approving the use of the School Support Committee grant funds. School Support Committee member Christina Paul, I believe, is here to explain. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here as a representative for the School Support Committee. We had some funds that were left over from the grants that were awarded to the schools this year. The balance is $4,052.40. We reached out again to the schools and asked them to share with us some ideas of projects that they would like to implement that would lead to a positive impact for teachers and students going into next year. We had 2 ideas presented to our committee that we felt would benefit from our support. The first is Piso Elementary to purchase manuals for K-3 teachers and the leadership team for an additional reading program called University of Florida Literacy Initiative. These manuals will be used as part of a training that those teachers will participate in this summer so that they will be able to implement the additional reading strategies at the start of the next school year. The School Support Committee is recommending funding of $1,820 to purchase 26 manuals. The second is for Temple Terrace Elementary to send teachers to the Ron Clark Academy to attend the House Mania Conference. This program focuses on unity and sense of belonging as well as motivation for positive behavior and academic improvement. It has been implemented at other schools in the district with similar behavior dynamics and has been proven to be very successful. Although we are only able to recommend funding for 2 teachers, the principal is working on securing additional funding to send more, and the total of our recommendation is $1,990.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Are there any members of the public who wish to address this? Don't leave yet. We might have some questions. Are there members of the public who wish to address this item? Not. Council members, are there any questions?
I do. What kind of feedback have you gotten from the area schools about our grant process and the award amounts possible? That I just want to make sure we're able to get the information out to them and it works.
I want to say like 50 grant applications. There were a lot of grant applications, and I haven't had anybody tell me that there was any difficulty with it. But of course, we would like to have more, especially if we have a little bit left over. We want to make sure that we use all the money.
Councilmember Schistler.
I thought our rules were $1,000 limit on these grants.
Because we had the 4,000 left over, and there were only 2 schools that came with the second presentation. Yeah, we wanted to see if we could go ahead and approve for those very specific fundings.
Was Temple Terrace Reeds brought up in it excuse me, later on in the fiscal year?
I'm sure that Ms. Wells will probably work. I'm sure that Ms. Wells will probably work with.
But you got no money left.
What do you mean?
I mean, you've used up all the budget for the year.
Right.
Okay, so if Temple Terrace Reeds comes forth with a request, there's not going to be any money to fund it.
Correct.
When is that event?
September, usually late.
It's October.
October, but everything gets spent
Right.
beforehand.
It's the actual event is October in conjunction with the fire department open house, but obviously you have to
Spend the money
spend before you get there.
Just a lot of money for two grants. It's $4,000. And again, I'm not trying to second guess.
No.
I read the minutes from the meeting where this was discussed, and I wasn't able to pull out any specifics. What was going on. Do you have any?
Yes, I was there, and they did deliberate carefully about it. There were just two schools that applied for the additional funds, and both schools made a case for how these funds can make a big impact on student achievement. So I know that the threshold is higher than we typically do, but I'm not really sure if you have any ideas about the alternatives for expending the funds. But I think that's what we had arrived at in the meeting.
Well, I have a follow-up question.
I'm losing track of who has the floor here. You still have the floor.
I've asked my question. Thank
Okay, and so, okay.
Well, my follow-up question is to the city manager and the city attorney, and that is, we have a grant level established, award levels. If we are to award outside of those levels, first off, is that possible, or does that set a bad precedent, or does it matter going forward into the next grant cycle? And if they were to not disperse all of the funds that had been allocated to them in this budget cycle, what would happen to them at the end and going into the next budget?
So, and Jim, our finance director, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine the funds will just go back into they dissolve back into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year, unless there's some different reserve account that this is drawn from. I'm looking to Mr. Ingram to yay or nay me.
That's correct.
And then, as far as the provisions about the limits on the grants, I apologize, I don't know the particulars of the specific grant program and how it's written. I'm not sure if the city attorney does as well. We can get that information to you.
No, I'd have to look to see whether it was an ordinance or a resolution, and how was that? Okay, Gil's shaking his head, so.
I helped draft it back in 1996. It's up to 1,000 by rules within the committee, okay? But it does establish a precedent going forward. And the rules were very succinct in you got up to $1,000 and that was it. And there were many, many, many grants that were cut back because they went over $1,000. So they were fully funded to the $1,000 limit. And I would agree with Councilman Fernandez concern that we might be establishing a precedent that's going to be difficult to overcome in the future, and not, well, why bother applying for these grants? To the other point, they were well received in the last couple of years, post-COVID. COVID messed up everything, but after schools came back after COVID, they were well received by the schools and well responded to by the schools and the teachers. I agree with you there. And everybody played within the rules. I'm concerned with going over the $1,000 threshold. And, you know, it's like with everything else, if we don't have to spend the money, we don't spend it. That's just the conservative nature of my being, but I'll go with what council's pleasure.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, and you've been closer to the school support committee than I have. I've never served on that committee. I could have swore, and maybe I'm wrong, but I could have sworn we've gone over $1,000 on some of these before.
You could count on one hand in the 25 years that it's been in
Really?
existence. How
Really?
many times it's gone over?
I could
I'm
have
not
swore
aware
that we
of
had.
anyone. Maybe a couple dollars, but not double,
Okay. All
or
right.
almost double.
So I'm going to take the lead of you guys who know more about this than I am, but than I do. My question for you to think about, though, is if this $1,000 threshold was established in 1996, is it time to revisit that threshold? I mean, that seems like a pretty old. I mean, I don't think $1,000 goes anywhere near what it used to go to in 1996. Now, I'm not suggesting we violate our own rules. I'm just wondering if we ought to take a look at our rules to see if it needs to be revised.
I have no problem with that. I would agree with that. You know, maybe it's time to re-examine it. I know the committee does, as you said, they scrub these things. I mean, they beat them up.
They do.
For every penny, and to watch it is amazing. But your comment that we only received 2 applications, so we ended up approving both of them, concerns me. That's all. And I would say that to any of the committee members if they were here now.
Look, can I ask you another question?
Yes.
This is kind of for everybody here, this question for discussions. We're struggling to figure out what to do now.
Yeah.
What would you feel, and I don't know if this will work for them or not, but this gives them a chance to make it work. How would you feel about approving both of these requests up to the $1,000 threshold? If the school wants to take that, then they have to figure out how to raise the remainder of the money or scrap the project and don't accept the grant, but that way we're approving we're approving what the committee has done just up to the threshold allowed by our rule.
Yeah, I mean, because my concern is with everybody else who submitted grants, they were funded according to the rules, and it just seems very unfair to fund, even though I do not disagree in the viability of the projects or the importance, it just seems very unfair to fund them according to different rules.
I can see that.
Yeah,
Councilmember Chambers.
yeah, question on that line, and you may not know the answer, but do you think both schools could benefit from the $1,000? I mean, it looks for the second school, Temple Terrace could send 1 teacher instead of 2 for the $1,000, and instead of 20 booklets, maybe 10 booklets. Would that be a benefit to those schools?
I'm sure that it would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Abel.
What you suggested was exactly what I was thinking to address this, and I would like to make sure we also address future changes in the grant amount, because like you said, 1996 is a long time ago, and there's been a lot of inflation since then. So are we going to make a motion?
Well,
stating that?
you hold the spot, I'll come back to you. Are we good? I mean, are we comfortable with? Okay.
I move to approve both grants up to the threshold of $1,000. I think that's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays? They were approved up to 1,000 now.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Paul, I'm not real sure of the mechanisms you and Ms. Wells and city clerk need to figure out how, I don't know exactly the mechanics of how this discussion takes place with the schools to let them know why, so that they don't think that we're not, you know.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
We have a meeting next week, so
Okay.
I'm sure that we'll go over it then.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And so, council, I don't know that we need a motion on this, but do we have agreement to give staff direction to take a look at this threshold? Is this something that we want them to look at and see if maybe needs to be, is there a way to figure out what $1,000 was in 1996 and then what is the equivalent amount of money in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, I think a bigger discussion would be amongst the people who actually submit grants, saying, there are no projects or uses that I can really see that I benefit from at a $500 level or $1,000 level, or, you know, I mean, that has to be part of the conversation to me.
Who's going to do that?
Well, I think that could probably be at a school support committee meeting. They could probably invite some staff from the area schools that are knowledgeable about grant funding and different projects that they might
Okay.
benefit from.
So how's this sound to everybody? What if we ask the school support committee members to kind of tackle this issue and make a recommendation to us about what they think that number should be? Does that sound?
Yes.
Does that meet your objective? Does that sound good?
Yeah, I agree. If I could add to
Yeah.
that, too. We're very fortunate with the school support committee that they're all educators. Okay, they're all active educators. And I think I calculated at one point between all of them, there's almost 2 centuries worth of experience. So they know, and they'll be very capable of coming back to themselves and us and saying, well, we need to increase that in some capacity to make it viable.
So that's what we want you guys to take a look at. Now, remember to remind them that our overall funding is going to be the same. So they can get more grants at a smaller amount, or they can get fewer grants at a larger amount, because we don't have money to double the amount that we grant. So really, you know, what's going to be more beneficial, so.
And don't forget Temple Terrace Reads.
Good? All right. Thank you, ladies, and good discussion. Thank you. Next is a resolution terminating the contract with Moore Sports Group to resurface River Hills Park tennis courts. Leisure Services Director Carl Langfeld is here to explain.
Oh.
Good evening.
Did we vote on the motion?
Did we not vote on the
I
motion?
don't know.
No, we didn't. We had a motion a second. No, we voted.
We voted on it.
We voted.
Yeah, I think we voted on
Sorry,
it. Okay.
like a goldfish.
Ah, well, I guess it's better to be sure, but. Okay, Mr. Langfeld.
Okay.
Tennis courts.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm here tonight requesting a resolution to terminate by mutual agreement the contract between the city and Moore Sports Group for the conversion of the tennis courts at River Hills Park to pickleball courts. Last year, we attempted to bid this project out on a couple of different occasions for the resurfacing of the courts. On the second attempt, we were able to obtain one viable bid for the job. That was with Moore Sports Group. Earlier this year, back in March, staff met with the construction team from Moore Sports for a pre-construction meeting to discuss the conversion. They took a close look at the courts and said that they are not a good candidate for renovation and conversion due to the age of the courts and the significant amount of decay that those courts have experienced over the 40-plus years of existence. The cracks in the courts, the chipping of the courts, that they would be able to, should we want them to go ahead and resurface the courts. However, there would be no longevity, there would be no viable usage beyond the very short term for those courts, as whatever surfaces that they put down on them would quickly show through the cracks and the chips, and the age of that court would quickly show through. Discussion among staff and the contractor, the best route forward there is to terminate this contract. Both us and More Sports have agreed that this is the best path forward. What will happen beyond the approval of this resolution, the court will be demolished and that space will be converted just into green space within River Hills Park. That does not mean the future of outdoor pickleball in the community is dead. What we are started planning for is a comprehensive renovation of the Whiteway tennis court facility and to incorporate a pickleball component into that facility as we look to a renovation at that location. So what I'm asking for tonight is a resolution to terminate the agreement that we have with More Sports for the resurfacing of those courts at River Hills Park. I stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Are there members of the public who wish to comment? If not, I do have one question, Carl. Are we, I know what, this makes sense, I get it. But I'm wondering what it would cost in the future. Are we going to contemplate adding this to our capital improvement plan at some point to reestablish pickleball courts down there? Because I know there are people that use those courts.
The best spot as we've been looking at what we can do with pickleball courts is as we're looking at the Whiteway facility where the hard courts are, is to establish a pickleball component to that facility where we have tennis and pickleball in one location. That location is, I feel, more suitable because of a lot of the infrastructure that is already there with the parking, the bathroom facility, the infrastructure that will be required to add lights there, which is already there as part of the Whiteway facility, and to establish a racket paddleball sports complex at that location, which would have both the tennis and the pickleball component.
Okay, thank you. Council members, Councilman
Yeah. I couldn't quite glean it from the report, but and given the fact that it's a mutual dissolution of the contract, we have no liability or no exposure of liquidating damages of any?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Okay.
Councilmember Fernandez.
So the Whiteway tennis courts are the home tennis courts for King High School.
Yes, ma'am.
Tennis team. This renovation, would this have any impact on their usage?
No, ma'am.
So are you actually looking to add courts, or would this restripe or change the layout?
The Whiteway tennis courts are nearing the end of their useful, of their, we resurface them every couple of years, and you get to a point where the subsurface of the courts are no longer suitable for resurfacing, and you now need to completely take them out and build new courts. We're getting there within the next couple of years. It's not something that we're going to be doing next year or probably the year after, but as we're looking forward beyond that. So at that point, we would end up reconfiguring that entire parcel to fit both the tennis courts and pickleball courts onto that location.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Was this project in this year's budget or last year's?
It was in last year's budget.
Oh, and it was carried over?
It was carried over. The company that was doing it was headquartered out of Cape Coral. The hurricane messed up the entire time frame of the project, which is why it ended up getting carried over.
And what's going to happen to the money now?
We will be using a portion of that money to fund the demolition. The demolition of the courts is about $14,000. The remaining of it will revert back to the CIT fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to cost $14,000 to take out a court?
Well, it's multiple courts plus the fencing. And that was the low quotes. We had quotes from $14,000 all the way up to $40,000 to demo and remove all of that, and then to regrade the land.
Okay. Other questions, council members?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Okay.
And this could be a fun fact, but when those courts were put in back in the late 70s, it was advised against it because with the water table, you couldn't use asphalt. And asphalt's the best surface. They did concrete, and from the get-go, the concrete was hard to keep. It kept cracking, and we've resurfaced it many times. So it's time for those courts to leave, so.
Good. Is there a motion?
Move to approve, move to approve the resolution terminating the contract with Moore Sports Group to resurfacing the River Hills Park tennis courts.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted. Thank you. Next is the first public hearing and first reading of an ordinance adopting voluntary annexation of folio number 036917-0000, addressed as 11714 North 58th Street. I will open the public hearing and ask anyone who intends to speak on this matter to stand for the oath administered by the city clerk.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Very good, thank you. Mr. Schoen, would you please poll for ex parte communication?
Yes. If any of you have had any ex parte communication, either written or oral, with anyone concerning this matter that has now been called before you, please state what that communication was. If it was written, provide a copy of that to the clerk for the record. If it was either written or oral, please state now with whom that communication took place, the sum and substance of the communication, and when it occurred. So, Councilwoman Fernandez.
None.
I have had none.
I've had none.
I have had none.
I've had none. Thank you.
Very good. Community Development Director Mike Sherman is here to explain. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Tonight for first public hearing is a request from Fala Ventures LLC and the applicant Pressman Associates to consider annexation of a 0.84 acre parcel into the city of Temple Terrace. This first slide is an aerial map to sort of orient us to the project tonight. This property, as I said, is 0.84 acres. It fronts on North 58th Street. It is in the unincorporated Hillsborough County right now. And the request is to annex this property from unincorporated Hillsborough County into the municipal limits of Temple Terrace. Right now on the property there is a single-family home. The existing future land use map category in Hillsborough County is residential 20, which allows for residential uses up to 20 dwelling units per acre. The existing zoning is RMC 20. It allows for single-family homes, multifamily, residential, as well as duplexes. So this annexation tonight will be the first of three land use actions that will be undertaken by the applicant. The second one, if it's annexed into the city, will be to amend the comprehensive plan future land use map category from a county category to a city category. And then the third land use action will be to rezone the property to the PUD category. After the three land use actions come through, there will be construction plan review to redevelop the site and the adjacent property. Got some pictures on 56th Street from the property. The first one to the left is looking south on 58th. The second one is the property looking west. The third one would be looking east on 58th Street. And the third picture on the right is looking north on that street. This is a concept master plan for the whole project, and I wanted to include this in here so the council has an idea of what the ultimate plan for the applicant is. Ultimately, it's to redevelop the Golden Corral site and use this portion of the property through the PUD zoning process to make it part of the overall development, and they want to use this section for this lot for parking, landscaping, and stormwater management. So, Annexation in the state of Florida is governed under Chapter 160 or 171 of the Florida statutes, specifically 171.043. It talks about the character of the area to be annexed. So, to be annexed, it's got to meet either subsection 1, meet subsection 1 of the statutes, and either subsection 2 or 3. The first one is that the total area to be annexed must be contiguous to the municipality at the time of the annexation proceedings is begun, reasonably compact, no part of the area shall be included with the boundary of another incorporated municipality, and subsection 1 standards are met. The second one, subsection 2 says part or all of the area to be annexed must be developed for urban purposes. An area developed for urban purposes is defined as any area which meets any one of the following standards. A, it has a total resident population to at least 2 persons for each acre of land included within its boundaries. It has a total resident population to at least 1 person for each acre of land included within its boundaries, and is subdivided into lots and tracts so that at least 60% of the total number of lots and tracts are 1 acre or less. This also is met by this application. Subsection 3 does not meet the standard, but it's okay because it meets the first 2. So from statutory rules, it's eligible for annexation into the city limits. Previous actions that were undertaken by the Hillsborough County Planning Commission on April 3rd, the staff reviewed it and recommended approval. Staff also recommends approval of first reading of the ordinance of 1545, annexing a 0.84 acre parcel of land with an address of 11714 North 58th Street into the municipal limits of Temple Terrace, and we are asking that we also directed to schedule the second hearing and reading of ordinance 1545 for May 2nd, 2023. I'm able to answer any questions that the council may have.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Prior to questions, are there members of the public who wish to address this item? Is this the applicant's representative?
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South, number 400 in St. Petersburg. I am the authorized representative, and I do want to thank Mr. Sherman because he's been a little bit shorthanded as department, so he's been able to move this application forward, and he's been able to keep our feet to the fire as well, so that's all good. As Mr. Sherman's indicated, the City County Planning Commission has already reviewed this and approved the future land use change under their venue, which in their report they note that it would lower the residential density from 20 dwelling units per acre to 18, and also the commercial intensity from a 0.75 FAR to a 0.35 FAR. I don't have this on an overhead, but I do want to point out that the properties to the south of the future land use site are commercial now. So it's a budding commercial, both are on 2 sides of the subject property. The property to the north is an apartment complex of which the rear abuts. And as Mr. Sherman has indicated, we've submitted conceptual plans. The overall goal here is that it would just serve as overflow parking and retention on this parcel. And the owner of this parcel has ownership of the old Golden Corral, which, as I saw today, is in pretty bad shape. So that's a project that's coming up, and they're very intent on moving forward and intend to move forward. In fact, they moved forward to purchase this property. I have also been in touch with and have an email from Mr. Stephen Jaros. In his email, indicates he is the president of the Pleasant Terrace Civic Association. Asked him if he had any questions or any issues, of course, and made him aware of the project, and as we're moving forward. And he just emailed back saying he had no commentary to offer at the time. So that was neither a plus, neither for or an email in opposition to the request. I stayed up with him, make him aware of progress as we're moving through the project. So with that, again, we appreciate the staff's work and ask your consideration. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? If not, council member questions. Councilmember Schisler.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Tom Pressman.
Todd Pressman?
Todd Pressman.
Okay. Mr. Schoen, you asked about ex parte communication. I don't know if this falls under it or not. When I finally saw a picture of where this was, the information I had wasn't telling me. About 2 years ago, Mr. Pressman contacted me wanting to name within the building department about this piece of property. So yes, only to the extent that I told him who to contact.
Okay.
Okay, just for clarification and transparency, because I was sitting there saying, I know this is, now, just to clarify, I apologize for that. That was my only question.
I wouldn't define that as heavy-handed lobbying in any.
Oh, no, not at all,
any
not
case
at all. It was
whatsoever.
just a reference, but I said no, and I've heard in the past but that there was. No, I have no questions regarding anything. I just wanted to clarify the situation.
Are there questions, council members?
I do.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Oh, this is for our city staff. And I know you went through the allowed uses. So going forward, the potential proposed use, would that require any changes in traffic patterns? Or I know 56th Street is at capacity. Would there be anything that the city would need to change about our land use or zoning or traffic to accommodate this project?
So first, there will be no access to the Golden Corral site from 58th Street. This would only be for parking, stormwater, and landscaping. The Golden Corral has been developed already, and while they want to expand it, there's one restaurant now. They want to put a second restaurant with some retail. So there'll be increases in mobility fee to accommodate for the additional traffic generated from that site. There'll probably also be water and sewer impact fees that they'll have to pay for the new fixtures and the water and sewer demand that it will require. There will not be any need for school impact fees because this will be a commercial development and will have no impact on our schools.
And as far as the traffic expectations on 56th Street, would that be an issue with an increase in usage?
So with the mobility fee, it's a pay-and-go system. So the city engineer will calculate or review the impacts associated with that. The applicant will provide us a concurrency analysis, and then the city will charge them a mobility fee based on the additional trips generated from that property.
That's it.
Thank you. Other questions? I have one, and I've been through this process 100 times now since I've been on council, but this one's a little different in that we are annexing into an area that since I've been on council, we've never probed into. And let me start by saying I like the project. This is going to bring value to the city. This is going to bring value to the surrounding area. This is a good project, and I like it. Here's my question, though. The current zoning of that piece of property is R20. Did I hear you correctly? In the unincorporated?
RMC. The future land use map is Res 20, and it's RMC 20, I believe, is the zoning classification in unincorporated Hillsborough County.
So what would it, suppose that we did the annexation and then the process unexpectedly stopped. What would the zoning be in the city? Would it continue to be the equivalent of Res 20?
So if they annex into the city.
And then did nothing else?
Yes, sir. Then, and it would be developed under the Hillsborough County's future land use map category and the zoning classification in Hillsborough County. Normally what we would do, though, is prior to rezoning a property, they would need to, prior to developing the property or redeveloping it, we would request that they do a comp plan amendment to a future land use map category, and rezone that property to a city category. Right now, there's a single-family home on the property where people are living in it. So there'll probably remain a home on there unless it's torn down. And then prior to any development, though, they're going to need to rezone and do the comp plan amendment to a city category.
Okay, so here's what I'm contemplating, or I'm trying to see what, and I don't think that there's any intent to do this, but things happen, unexpected events happen, circumstances take weird turns, economic things happen, wars, terrorists, I mean, there's all kinds of things can happen that we can't anticipate. What happens if we annex this property and then something unexpected happens and the owner abandons their current plans and they never get around to rezoning, they never get around to building the restaurants? What I'm getting at is we would never in 100 years be in favor of annexing this if there's a chance that it were developed into a Res 20 multifamily subdivision or multifamily complex that we're in charge of providing services to. We would never do that. I don't think. I'm speaking for one person here, but do we have any safeguards? And I know how the process works. It gets annexed and then it gets rezoned and then we get a site plan review. I mean, I know that it happens in a line. It's all linear. But is there anything that safeguards us from this unexpected or unanticipated? Could that happen?
Yes, it could happen, but if they wanted to develop it, and other than a single-family home, they're going to have to come back to the city to petition the city for a rezoning of a comp plan amendment.
But it would be, they wouldn't have to rezone it if they wanted to build multifamily.
So under the county right now, it allows for gross density of 20 units per acre. I don't know that they're going to be able to achieve that on that property since it's 0.84 acres. So it's going to be something less than 20 units, obviously.
Right, so they could build a 14-unit
Something like that,
apartment
yes, sir.
building and they would never have to come back to us for rezoning. That's the point I'm trying to get at, is that I realize that it's probably a small threat. I don't think this is glaring, but it is a possibility. Am I right? Or?
You are correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Mr. Pressman, do you have any, and I'm not trying to disparage your, I know that this is not in your plan, but we all know that things do happen too. So can you?
Well, I guess the best answer would be if you bring the property into the city, annexation, you're going to have zoning and future land use category control. So that'll be under your thumb in terms of what categories those are going to be approved for. The applicants could come in and ask for a intensive category or less intensive category. That'll be your choice whether you're going to approve it or not. So I see it as you having a lot of control or great control over the property. And as indicated right now, the density of 0.84, it would allow today for multifamily. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for multifamily because you have commercial abutting to the south and on the west at 56th. So I would say, Mr. Mayor, I think you have plenty of control here. And once it comes in the city, it's under your auspices.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Attorney, you have anything you'd want to say on this, or?
I think, I mean, what you're saying is correct. I mean, right now, oftentimes these things come to us as a package. Annex and rezone, do everything at the same time. Here, all you're doing is annexing, and it's going to come in as it's currently designated with the county. And then we've annexed a piece of property with that zoning.
The county's zoning district would allow for single-family duplexes as well as multifamily development. The city council has the ultimate authority to approve site and construction plans like they've done with a number of developments. I imagine it would be in your authority to say we want a single-family home there, because that's consistent with the future land use map in the zoning district as well.
Let me ask you another question that maybe make me feel a little better, if nothing else. The Golden Corral property itself, the part that's already annexed, that's already belongs to the city, that's zone general commercial?
Yes, sir, that's.
You couldn't build multifamily on that? Or could you?
It does not allow for residential development.
All right. Council members, other questions? Yes, Councilmember Chambers.
Thank you. This is a question of, I don't know who, but the question, since for a bit of the future that will remain a single-family home on that piece of property, correct? Who picks up the garbage now, county or us?
That's the county right now, sir.
So when it annexes in, then we would pick that up?
After a certain period of time, the city would take it over. But if it's after May 2nd, which it will be, the county picks it up until the next year, and then the city would start picking it up
Okay,
after
and our
May
police and
1st
fire,
of 2024.
Police and fire would start with that property immediately, or after it's done? Like if there was a fire on that property, you'd probably respond mutual aid anyway, but, so we pick up those services?
I imagine we have reciprocal agreements with the county, but yes, we would pick up those services.
Okay, that's all, I just wanted to get that on the record.
Very good. Council members, is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. If there are no other questions, I'm going to ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance. We ready for that? Okay. Madam Clerk,
An ordinance of the City of Temple
closing the public hearing.
Florida.
I'm just all goofed up here.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, approving the voluntary annexation of one parcel of certain real property located north of East Fowler Avenue and west of North 58th Street, addressed as 11714 North 58th Street, and totaling .84 plus minus acres lying within the unincorporated area of Hillsborough County, legally described in Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part hereof, directing that this ordinance be recorded with the clerk of the Circuit Court of Hillsborough County, directing that the corporate boundaries of the city be redefined to include the annexed area, providing for severability, providing for correction of typographical errors, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion?
I move to approve an ordinance adopting voluntary annexation of folio number 36917-0000 as addressed as 11714 North 58th Street upon first reading.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on first reading and will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, May the 2nd. Mr. Pressman, thank you for being here. And please tell the developer that this is a great project. We're excited to see it moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, council business. Council priority goals for fiscal year 23-24. Do we have a slideshow with this, or am I just reading off the hard copy? Okay.
We do not have a slideshow. It was included just as a reference per the direction that we had from the prior council priority setting session. Not sure if, Mayor, if you want to go read through it all, or just want to keep it in as reference to the public that we have it here.
Well, it is rather lengthy, but I could just, we have a couple people I know are interested in it, so let me just read through some of the, so as I think the public knows, we did our annual goal-setting session in March. It was a very productive session. We got a lot of good discussion, and the following priorities are the result of that discussion. Everybody had a piece of this. Some of these ideas were everybody here had some of these ideas. So in terms of infrastructure, some of the priority goals are to continue marching forward for a future police station. We are continuing to march forward on the Emergency Operations Center, which is in addition to Fire Station 1. We are contemplating Fire Station 3, which will be needed in the future if we continue to expand to the east region of our city. We are looking at multimodal enhancement, which I think most people know. We are working with the Florida Department of Transportation and our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee to develop a number of projects. As you know, we are working on City Hall enhancements. You'll notice as you came in, there's a lot of renovation going on the first floor. We expect those modifications and enhancements to continue at least for another year or two. We are working to increase median landscaping on 56th Street north of Fowler Avenue between Fowler and Fletcher. That is a county road, but we've been talking to them about doing some landscaping. The library, we are pursuing a multi-year project probably to pursue museum and cultural showcase element for the library. It is part of our capital improvement plan, although the projected amounts are probably a little outdated, but we are marching that forward. Lightfoot Center, we're going to explore the expansion of the AV capabilities to broadcast meetings such as this one from Lightfoot so that we can have town hall meetings and so forth from Lightfoot. We can take advantage of the same broadcast that we have in this room. We are looking at re-landscaping the front of the family recreation complex. I don't know yet whether that would be something for fiscal year 24 or possibly for 25, depending on other priorities. We are attempting to acquire the parking lot across the street on the north side of City Hall from Hart, who currently owns about 3/4 of that lot. We're trying to purchase that. We are, as we do all the time, we are continuing to look at wage competitiveness. We are looking at annual raises for all our employees, but in addition to that, we're looking for each specific job category and how competitive it is with the region. Health insurance is a every year thing that we continue to look at and look for ways to improve our benefits for our employees. We are trying to review all of our policy and processes from the inside out in terms of process mapping and streamlining inefficiencies as we discover them. We've started with the customer-facing processes like obtaining a permit or those kind of things. What are the steps in each of these processes, and what are the opportunities for us to straighten these lines out so that they're quicker and more efficient and more customer-oriented? We had discussion about adding a position of a grant writer, although we decided at this time against that. Not because we don't think we need a grant writer, because in the scheme of things, we think there are other ways that we can do this for the time being, although that position is still hopefully on the horizon for the future. We talked about expanding, or not expanding, kind of rebranding the Riverwatch Task Force to expand their mission to include natural resources and kind of rebrand them as the Natural Resource Advisory Committee. We had some ideas about a local certification for residents and possibly businesses who take certain steps like solar panels or xeriscaping or other energy saving type initiatives, and maybe the city could establish a certification program whereby they get a recognition or maybe a plaque in the yard. I have met with the chair of the Riverwatch Task Force about this, and we have had some discussions trying to move this forward. Historic preservation, we are still working, well, we're getting close to bringing a historic preservation ordinance before this body for approval so that we can pursue certified local government designation. We talked about code compliance, new, different, innovative ways to try to deal with some of the to try to deal with some of the rare cases where the daily fines don't seem to be effective and they just accrue forever and the place never comes into compliance. So we talked about a business report on the overall financial impact of our fees and charges and business taxes on businesses. We talked about police maintaining traffic calming and speed reduction as a priority. Even since this meeting, the police department has established some things that have already made a huge impact, and there are more things on the horizon. Marketing, we talked about increased promotions of city and city-affiliated group events, provide new residents with a welcome packet of sorts with useful information and who to call for different services. Utilities, we talked about implement a system to address street striping in a more efficient, timely manner. we had discussion about the striping on some of the street, even though the pavement may not be due for resurfacing, sometimes the paint striping erodes faster or declines faster than the pavement, so we're looking at that. We have several things going on in land use, including modifying the land development code to permit accessory dwelling units, or what's commonly called ADUs, which are in owner-occupied homes. If you have a old home or something that has an old mother-in-law suite or something like that in the back, that you would be able to maintain that as an auxiliary dwelling. Strategic plan, the city manager and I have talked about this since even before he got hired. The first time we met, we talked about this. I think we need to take a look at our community-wide strategic plan and maybe develop some intermediate. I think 2040 is a long way out. And in today's world, you have no idea what's going to happen in 2040. You'd be lucky if you knew what's going to happen in 3 years. So I really think we should try to distill where we'd like to see the city in 5, 8, 10 years so that we can make sure we're working towards that. And I think we've done some of that informally, but I think we need to get together and talk about that. We talked about the environmentally friendly cities initiative. I think I covered that. We talked about reinstituting glass recycling if it's financially feasible. I don't know that it is, but that's something that we need to continually look at. Youth development programs, we talked about expanding opportunities for high school internships, shadowing programs, police explorer programs, parks and rec, youth development initiatives. We have a lot of these already, but we're constantly looking for ways to expand those. Golf carts, we had conversation about the feasibility of expanding golf cart parking in areas of the city where people use golf carts for transportation. Maybe we can fit more parking in the parking lot because the spaces are smaller. Annexation, it's ironic we talked about that tonight, but we talked about developing more strategic planning for annexation where it's fiscally advantageous for the city, kind of like what we did tonight, except we're primarily talking about at the eastern end of the city where there's the most opportunity for expansion. Community redevelopment area aesthetics, we talked, well, that's kind of been overcome by events already. So we talked about the CRA pedestrian master plan, which we hope to move forward with, which would be a pedestrian level pathway through the downtown area that would tie the different parcels of property together. The next two items are issues that the council, we need to decide. We have an item coming up under the city manager report that might help us have some discussion about this, but the next two items are involving the development of the area just south of the downtown, the Springdale Place, the stormwater park across the street from the post office, and then the parcel that the city owns that is on the river, which is right across the street, right across River Hills from that pond. The idea that we talked about, which I personally I think is a great idea, but that's just because it was my idea, so it has to be great. But I'd like to see the pedestrian plan that was brought forward a while back go through the downtown area down to that Springdale Park where the pond is, develop that into more green space, usable, clean the pond out, make it look nice, and then across the street to that waterfront property where we could establish like a bit of a festival grounds. We could put a band shell or a little amphitheater there with its back to the neighborhood so the noise is projecting out towards 56th Street. We could put a bathhouse, we could have a parking area for food trucks, and we could have some festivals right there on the river, looking out over the river. We could have a canoe launch there, have put kayaks and canoes there. People could go down there and check out a kayak if you don't own one. Take your kids downtown for an ice cream cone, have dinner, go out and canoe for an hour or so, come back, listen to music, that kind of a thing. So we had a lot of discussion about that. I think everybody's in favor of it conceptually, but obviously the question comes in as well, how are we going to pay for that and what's the impact going to be on our debt payments? And we asked the city manager to do some of that exploration, and we're going to hear from that in a little bit. So that's a lot. Does that sum it up? Did I miss anything? Okay, all right. That doesn't mean all this is going to get done, particularly overnight, but we do keep an ongoing list of our accomplishments. So the first thing we did at this meeting was to break out the list from last year to see what we've accomplished this, we've partially accomplished this, so it's kind of a rolling list. Any other carryover council business? Yes, Councilmember?
One item.
Sure.
In honor of the Library Week, to remind everybody that the Women's Club, Temple Terrace Women's Club, actually established the first library in Temple Terrace. And it was in an extremely small building that eventually became taken over by the club as one of their utility buildings. But the Temple Terrace Women's Club did establish the first library in the city of Temple Terrace.
See, that's a fun
another
fact.
fun
You
fact.
just
You
blew
just-
the fun fact for next month.
That's what I was gonna do.
Sorry.
All right.
There's a lot more to learn.
New business or board reports? Any new business or board reports? Very good. Okay, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. There are two items under the city manager section of the agenda. The first one is a report on the investment activity for the police pension fund. We were required by Florida statute to provide this to the council and make it available to the public. As you can see there, if you look through the report, there's various charts, and then there's a spreadsheet at the very end which outlines the activity of the fund over the year from October 1, 21 to September 30th of 2022. And if you have any sort of investment funds, personal investment funds, or retirement accounts, this probably looks very familiar. There's a negative there, so the fund is going, at that particular time, was going in the wrong direction. We're hoping, these retirement accounts and these kind of investment funds, they're long-term investments, so these things, there'll be peaks and valleys. Right now, we're a little bit in the valley, where we anticipate that this will likely mean that we're going to have to make an adjustment also in the city's contribution, which you'll see in the as we prepare the budget for next year. In terms of, you may ask a question logically, which would be, do we do the same thing for the fire pension fund? We haven't found that it's a requirement of statute, but we will provide it to you nonetheless. We're hoping to get that to you as soon as possible, so you'll have that on your agenda also. I'd be happy to take any questions, or have Mr. Ingram come up and answer any specific questions.
Gil, I know you serve on this board with me. Do you have any comments?
I have no comments or questions. Exactly.
Very good. Council members, any questions about this? Yes, Councilmember Fernandez.
I have a couple. With regard to the market losses, do we, as a city, have a requirement to fund so that there's a certain return on this, on the pension fund? And if so, with these market losses, did we anticipate something like this when we established the budget? Or is this going to cost more than what we expected for the city's required contribution?
I'm going to ask our finance director to come up and answer that. The short answer is, like any pension fund, the actuaries that look through it periodically will make adjustments to the contribution levels. If the fund starts to go into negative, because no fault of the fund necessarily, just the economy, then yes, the contribution level has to be adjusted to make up for, to hit the thresholds that the fund has as a target. So, but Mr. Ingram can address this better than I can.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The city requirement, the contribution requirement, is determined by an actuary valuation that's updated October 1st every year. So we already know what our requirement is going to be for fiscal year 24. That is set. We'll put that in the budget. We'll make those contributions. How the market downturn will affect future requirements is yet to be determined. I can tell you that at least on the first quarter of our fiscal year, October through December, that there was an upswing in the balances and the investment activity. We'll find out in a few weeks. We have the board, the pension boards will meet again as they do each quarter, and they will give us a report on the first quarter of the calendar year. So we'll see how it is. But to answer your question, the contributions are set. They're not going to change. Any effects will be put on the next fiscal year valuation. Did I answer all the questions?
Yes, and so with regard to the investment choices, does this actually sit on our balance sheet, or is this in the state pool of funds? That's one question. And then the second would be, who controls the choices that the investments are available?
Well, I'll answer this, the second question first. The pension board itself, which I believe the mayor and Mr. Schisler are on, they control the investment options based on recommendations from the advisor. We do have an advisor that comes to every meeting. They bring the reports. There is, discussion often about the different funds, investment funds that are in the portfolio and whether or not they should, back off of one or increase another, or sometimes bring in a new fund. So that is on the pension boards themselves. The first question, I'm sorry, can you?
Well, is our pension for our, and this question is really firefighters and police officers, is it commingled in the Florida system, or does the city of Temple Terrace have are the funds separated and standalone and solely under the control of the pension board and the city?
They are standalone. They do not, it is included in our report, annual comprehensive financial report every year, and it's not intermingled with our other funds and our holdings. It's completely managed by an outside group. There's Salem Trust manages the fire pension fund. The Foster and Foster manages the police pension fund. I'm not sure, I would have to research, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not understanding the part about the state
Well, like the
side of it.
Florida retirement,
It's not part of it for us.
that's what
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I was just asking.
Okay,
if
gotcha.
it-
Yes, no, that is completely separate, yes.
That's all, I just wanted to confirm.
Other questions, council members? Good, thank you, Mr. Ingham.
Thank you.
Mr. Beal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second item stems from the council priority setting session. As the mayor alluded to earlier, there was a discussion about the city possibly taking what's known as Parcel C, the land on the river, the about 3-acre piece of land on River Hills Drive, off the market, off the real estate market. And Councilmember Schisler asked that if we were to consider that at first the city do basically an analysis of the debt service capacity, because if we're not selling that property, obviously we're not going to get the revenue from that property to help offset the debt, which has been the plan of the city council acting as the CRE board for several years. Councilmember Schisler met with Finance Director Ingram recently. They went through the numbers. There's a report provided to you. Just to summarize, basically what they did is they took two scenarios, a best case scenario, which would be that this property is taken off the market and the remaining 2 city properties are sold within the next year to 2 years. And there's an appreciation in our TIF values of about 15% stemming from that sale and just overall market value. And we continue to make regular payments. In that case, we would have no problem whatsoever paying down this debt when the CRA sunsets, and the CRA could handle that. Worst case scenario would be if none of the city parcels sold, which I do not see as any possibility whatsoever. But if they didn't sell, obviously the appreciation of the TIF would likely be dampened, so it'd be 5% is what the ratio they apply to it. And they projected that out. So under the worst case scenario, the CRA would sunset in 2035, and it'd still be 3 years of debt service payments left to be paid out. If you saw the numbers, those are pretty significant numbers. But again, that scenario is very, very much the worst case, and I do not foresee that happening. So the reality is it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I would project it to be somewhere closer to the best case scenario than it would be at all closer to the worst case scenario. And if this report gives you the comfort level that you were seeking, staff, we just ask for your direction whether you want us to take the property off the market.
Well, let's start with Mr. Schisler, since you know where I stand on this, but you were the one that asked for these numbers, and that, which was good, by the way, that we look at the numbers, so. You going somewhere?
Huh? Okay, right. Now, the only thing that could again, going back to the best case scenario, where both parcels sell for $2 million and $1 million, pulling C off the market, timing is the biggest issue. You know, I mean, 2023 is essentially, fiscal 2023 is essentially over for that type of a transaction. No way we could get it done in that. So I figured 1 in 24, 1 in 25, both properties coming online. Best of all worlds. The general fund implication for that, you know, by 2023, it's like $16,000 in the best case scenario, and everything extinguishes in 2035. So it just goes away quickly, and that's applying the $3 million. Worst case, as Mr. Baez said, I don't see that happening, but if it didn't sell, what would be the implication? And you can see on the numbers, it gets quite heavy in 2036, 37, and 38, but it's way down the road, and that's assuming nothing sells. And every dollar that would sell would reduce that overall. I think the total, it's like $3 million. It's less than $3 million. So we get $3 million for those two properties that goes away. I think it's a viable option for the city to look at. Now, this doesn't pay for the improvements that are required down there. This is strictly for debt service. And I know this is, you know, for years and years and years, but that was our biggest concern is taking care of that. But again, TIF, that's what TIF is for. You know, the property, a community redevelopment project is designed to sell it cheap, live off the TIF monies from the improvement that's made. We get the best of both worlds, and we get the TIF, and even though we probably wasted 10 years of it, but we get the TIF monies, and we get the real value of the property as it sits right now in the market. The fair market value is significantly higher than what most CRAs sell their property for. I think it's a great deal. I think it's something that we should look at and move forward with it as we go down the pike.
Other comments, questions? This is the best idea I've had in years, and nobody's even talking about it.
I'll bite.
Councilmember Abel.
So I think, you know, when it comes to really making our city an excellent place to be, this plan really is bringing a lot of different ideas that we've had together. The pedestrian walkability, the beautifying the downtown, the connecting it to a destination. It even connects all the way back to River Hills Park. There's a sidewalk there. The stormwater pond, which has a real name that's not stormwater pond. All of these things coming together are what's really going to make our community great. So I'm totally in favor of it. I'm glad the numbers check out. So I'm all for it.
Okay. The only reasons I would have been against it was, one, I really wanted to see a good project down there because a lot of people keep asking for a retirement, like a river landing type project. We're not getting that. We're not going to get that. The second was the loss of revenue down the road, and we're seeing that that's probably not a factor. So that, and to protect green space, river access, I'm for that, taking it off the market and developing it into a park.
Councilmember Fernandez?
I'm mixed because I am concerned about taking a very valuable piece of property off the market, but I also recognize that it has been on the market for a considerable amount of time. And while this has been the case for quite a while, our residents have wanted additional housing that is in the style of River Landing or in the style of some of the Raintree properties. There has been no developer come forward that can get financing to create that property, and so it hasn't been created. I know that the residents that live as you go back towards the south side of Bullard, towards River Hills, have expressed a lot of concerns about additional density in housing there, given the traffic that currently exists, being the limited egress and ingress in that area. So I know that that is a concern for a lot of residents down there. If it's taken off the market and kept as a city property, it will never have property taxes. But I'm also of the opinion that property can provide value to the residents in more ways than property taxes. And I think the proposed use that we did bring up, well, I don't know if that will ever be realized to the extent that the project was discussed. It does provide value to our residents, and I think is still a good use for that property. So my only concern would be being able to take the worst case scenario. You know, we're out almost $1 million for each year for 3 years on debt service. And I know that that's the worst case scenario, but it is something to think about. And I don't believe the worst case scenario is what would happen, but there won't ever be tax revenue coming from this property. My other concern would be that where the residents in that area of the city have been concerned about density on that parcel, if we were to do something that has like a band shell or that would attract people, they might be equally concerned about living next to that kind of use. So that might not be it might not be as desirable as we think it would be a great use of the parcel. But I don't have any problem taking it off the market right now because we have had it on the market and we're not getting viable offers. So I don't have a problem taking it off the market and exploring, but I'm not necessarily 100% yes, this is the absolute use. That's it.
If we want to take, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This question?
Yes.
Carl, is there still a temple orange tree in the middle of that property?
There is an orange tree. I cannot vouch for what kind of orange it is.
Okay. Do we need a motion to do this?
If we're going to take it off the market, that is directing an action, then we would need a motion.
But do we need to do it through the CRA?
I don't know the answer to that.
How about this, just as, since we're not going to meet as a CRA this for any time soon right now, I think in abundance of caution, if you could take the motion this evening, if you're willing to do that as a city council, we'll double check everything. If we had to come back as a CRA, we would do that, but at least we'd have that direction right now from the council, and that would probably suffice it, I believe.
Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion to remove parcel C from the realtor and work towards turning it into a green space and riverfront property.
Okay, so do you mind if I interject here for a second? I think we have, well, I know we do, unless somebody's changed their mind in the last 3 minutes. We have consensus on taking it off the market right now, which is the action tonight.
Okay.
And then
Limited.
the other use.
Limited to removing parcel C from how do I say it? from the realtors.
Take it off the market.
Take it off the market, thank you.
Would you say it again?
I hereby move to remove parcel C from the market.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No nays. If that is somehow defective, we could probably schedule a 15-minute CRA meeting before the next council meeting or something to.
So I think this is okay because ultimately city council controls property. So I think you're fine, but if not, we will do that.
Yeah, okay. And we will continue to explore feasibility options. The council did not commit to this tonight. There's a lot more information too, so I hear you. Okay. You still have the floor, Mr. B.
Mr. Mayor, I do not have anything else. Thank you.
City Attorney's report.
Just briefly, I have a lien reduction to report. This concerned the property at 8429 Wakula Drive. A tree trimming service apparently started to cut a tree on this property after giving a quote to the property owner, but the property owner had not authorized them to move forward, yet they just thought they had the job and started to cut the tree. I don't recall how we found out about it, but a stop work order was issued before the tree came down, and the property owner was cited with cutting tree without a permit. This went to the code board. They found violation and issued a $25 a day penalty until a proper permit was obtained. Therefore, the lien amount was $175. This was reduced and we settled the lien for $75. Also, the property owner did have to pay the fee for the stop work order, so that was an additional $350. So, be sure you get your permits before you cut your trees.
Thank you, Mr. Schoen. Other items to come before the board? If you give me, I have a real quick update from Tallahassee, if you'll permit me. Our EOC is still in the House budget and it's still in the Senate budget. How it's made it through committees, it's still in both versions of their budget. However, they haven't started budget conference yet, which is where they start to plug in numbers and discuss priorities to make the House budget and the Senate budget mesh into one. But we're still in there. So I have not heard of any trouble. So as of about 4 o'clock, we were still in there. So it would take me all night to give you a legislative update, and you could probably give me one too. So I won't get into that. I do want to point out one thing, and I was going to mention it earlier, and then at the last minute I thought better of it because we were having such a great time and everybody was clapping and standing up and we were celebrating. I'm like, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here. So I didn't do that. But the award that we gave to Nathan Bynum for his bravery for helping stop that dangerous situation, there's a bill, there's two bills. There's a matching bill in the House and Senate right now in the Florida legislature that would make what happened there illegal. And instead of giving him an award, we'd be putting him in jail or taking him to court. I don't know if it'd be a criminal violation. There's a bill in the House and one in the Senate that are identical to make citizens' arrests illegal in the state of Florida. And so instead of giving him this plaque and giving him an award and talking about what a great job he did, we'd be talking about how illegal what his actions were. And so I don't think it's going anywhere. It doesn't look like it's advancing through committees. It doesn't look like it's moved anywhere, so hopefully it's going to die. But so next year, that whole scenario could be much different than it is now. Okay, so I gave you the downer thing. I didn't want to do that earlier, but you had to see. So, any other business to come before the council? If not, we'll stand adjourned.